Hey everybody. This video, I'm gonna not show you guys the notes packet. I'm gonna go over the steps of cellular respiration, which is pretty much what the notes packet is over. Um, don't ignore the notes packet because there are going to be things on the quiz that are in the notes that I won't go over today. But what we're gonna look at today is the stuff that I think might trip you up. So we're gonna head over to that in just a moment, and I'll see you in a second. Okay, so like I said, we're not going to actually look at the notes packet. Instead, what I'm going to have you guys do is just kind of go through a play-by-play that I already made here. And this is the sort of stuff that I've been drawing on the chalkboard for my in-class students. So hopefully this will help, and hopefully you guys can pause the video and look at various spots if you want to. So here we go. So like I said, the whole thing is cellular respiration. Step one is called glycolysis. And it's important to mention that glycolysis occurs with or without oxygen. So this is always the first step of cell respiration, no matter what. So in glycolysis, we start with a molecule of glucose, sugar, basically, preferred food source for our cells. And the main things I have kind of outlined here, but I'm going to draw on some stuff as we go. So we start with a 6-carbon molecule of glucose. The little C's in the circles designate a carbon atom. So we take a molecule called NAD+, reduce it to a molecule called NADH. This is going to matter later. I'll come back to that in a second, but NAD+ is a molecule needed for glycolysis to occur. This step also requires 2 molecules of ATP, and that's kind of a big deal. That'll be something that matters as we keep going. So our 6-carbon glucose is broken down into 2 molecules that we're calling pGal, but that's an abbreviation for phosphoglyceraldehyde, which is why we use the abbreviation pGal. So if glucose was 6-carbon, we break it into 2 things that are the same. It would make sense that they're both 3-carbon molecules. And then through another complex step that we're just kind of showing you as the outline of, that those pGal molecules are turned into 2 3-carbon molecules of pyruvate. But during this step, instead of using 2 ATP, we make 2 ATP twice. So in glycolysis, it's important to say that we used 2 ATP, but we made 4. So by that math, you could say that we had a net gain of 2 ATP in glycolysis. And that is the end of the glycolysis portion of cellular respiration. What happens is, so this I called step 1, glycolysis was step 1. Step 2 now depends on whether or not oxygen's available. So this is going to be showing you if oxygen's not present. We do a thing called fermentation. So it's important to mention that we don't actually make ATP in fermentation. We only regenerate that NAD+ molecule that, if you remember, we needed in glycolysis. So we can do more glycolysis if we have one of these fermentation pathways going. It's also important to mention that there's 2 different types. One's called lactic acid fermentation, one's called alcohol fermentation. Lactic acid fermentation, this is occurring in animals and animal products. So if you get stiff after working out, it's partially due to lactic acid production. So this can happen in your body. This is how we make yogurt, sour cream, at least probably back in the day, maybe not now, but so there's a variety of foods that are made using lactic acid fermentation. And it's a pretty simple process. We take pyruvate and it's turned into a different 3-carbon molecule called lactic acid. In this step, NADH is turned into NAD+, and that can be used in glycolysis in the future. Alcohol fermentation is slightly more complicated. We have 3-carbon pyruvate. It is reduced to 2-carbon acetaldehyde, and we lose the CO2. So alcohol fermentation, as you can imagine, alcohol drinks are produced using alcohol fermentation. So part of the reason that beer is fizzy is because that CO2 is a byproduct. So you know, kind of skipping ahead here. So this is occurring in plants and plant products. Things like sauerkraut are made by alcohol fermentation, soy sauce, and then, like I said, obviously alcohol drinks. Our acetaldehyde is then converted into ethyl alcohol. And again, in this step, we have NAD plus being converted into, NADH converted into NAD plus, and then that can be used in glycolysis. Just down here at the bottom, so in the absence of oxygen, this process, fermentation processes, can happen quote unquote forever, so long as glucose is still available for more glycolysis. So if oxygen's not present, that's it, we're done. If oxygen is present, we have a much more complicated pathway, and we're going to start that in video number 2. So tune into video number 2, and we can look at the other, the aerobic respiration half of this pathway.